The cameras started flashing before Meghan's black SUV even came to a complete stop outside 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Through the tinted windows, she could see the familiar chaos of New York media. Photographers pressed against the police barriers, their lenses glinting like predatory eyes in the harsh June evening light. Fans held up handmade signs, some supportive, others less kind, their voices blending into an indecipherable roar that seemed to vibrate through the vehicle's reinforced frame. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Ready for this? Lisa Martinez, her publicist, asked from the seat beside her. Though her voice carried more tension than confidence. Lisa had been managing celebrity crises for 15 years, but something about tonight felt different. The usual pre-interview butterflies had morphed into something heavier, more ominous. Meghan adjusted her navy blazer and took a steady breath. She'd chosen the outfit carefully, professional but not rigid, elegant but approachable. After years of royal protocols and media training, she knew that every detail would be scrutinized, dissected, and turned into headlines by morning. "As ready as anyone can be for Jimmy Fallon," she replied, attempting lightness, but her fingers betrayed her nerves as they smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. The security detail moved with practiced precision. 2 bodyguards emerged first, their eyes scanning the crowd with the intensity of Secret Service agents. The noise outside intensified as reporters shouted questions over each other. "Meghan, are you nervous about tonight? Any regrets about the royal family? Will you address the tabloid stories?" Their voices crashed against each other like waves, each trying to pull her attention in a different direction. Lisa's phone buzzed constantly in her hand, a stream of last-minute interview notes and strategy reminders from the PR team. But as they walked toward the entrance of the building, she caught fragments of whispered conversations among Fallon's production crew that made her stomach tighten. "This is going to be huge," one assistant murmured to another. "Jimmy's been preparing for this all week. He's got some killer material." The phrase killer material echoed in Lisa's mind as they passed the security checkpoint. She'd worked with Fallon's team before. They were professional, usually respectful, but tonight felt different. There was an electric anticipation in the air, the kind that preceded either triumph or disaster. Meghan noticed it too, the way the production assistant's eyes lingered on her a beat too long, the barely concealed excitement in their smiles. She'd learned to read these subtle cues during her years in the spotlight. Tonight wasn't just another promotional appearance. Tonight, she was the prize in some game she hadn't agreed to play. As they waited in the green room, Lisa scrolled through social media one final time. The hashtags were already trending. Hashtag Meghan on Fallon. Hashtag Tonight Show Royalty. Hashtag Fallon meets Markle. The internet was primed and waiting. Millions of people preparing to judge every word, every expression, every moment of vulnerability. "You know you don't have to answer anything that makes you uncomfortable," Lisa reminded her. Though they both knew that was easier said than done. Once those cameras started rolling, refusing to engage could look defensive, guilty, or worse, boring. Meghan nodded, but her mind drifted to Harry, who was back in California with the children. He'd wanted to come with her, sensing her apprehension about this particular interview, but they'd agreed it was better for him to maintain his distance from the media circus. Still, she wished he were here now, his steady presence a reminder that whatever happened tonight, she had something more important waiting at home. A young production assistant appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand and headset around her neck. "Ms. Markle, we're ready for you in makeup. Mr. Fallon is looking forward to the interview." Her smile was bright, professional, but Meghan caught something else beneath it, a kind of conspiratorial excitement, as if she were privy to some inside joke. As Meghan rose to follow the assistant, Lisa caught her arm gently. "Remember, smile, deflect, pivot to the positive. Don't take the bait no matter what he throws at you." But as Meghan walked toward the makeup room, past the walls lined with photographs of countless celebrities who had sat in Fallon's chair, she felt a familiar steel straightening her spine. She'd spent years being told to smile and deflect, to absorb criticism gracefully and never fight back. Tonight, for reasons she couldn't quite articulate, that strategy felt insufficient. The makeup artist worked quickly, touching up her foundation and adding a subtle gloss to her lips. In the mirror, she saw herself transforming into the polished version the cameras would capture, every flaw smoothed away, every imperfection hidden. But her eyes remained unchanged, reflecting a quiet determination that no amount of makeup could disguise. 5 minutes, Ms. Markle, another assistant called out, and Meghan felt the familiar pre-show adrenaline beginning to surge. She could hear the audience warming up in the studio, their laughter and applause echoing through the walls. Soon she would walk into those lights, sit across from Jimmy Fallon, and navigate whatever minefield he'd prepared for her. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, she wasn't just another guest hoping to survive the interview unscathed. Tonight, she was a woman who had already lost everything once and rebuilt herself from the ground up. Whatever Fallon had planned, she would meet it on her own terms. The studio lights hit Meghan like a wall of heat as she walked onto the Tonight Show set, her heels clicking against a polished floor with each measured step. The audience erupted in a mixture of applause and scattered cheers, but she could sense the undercurrent of expectation beneath their enthusiasm. They weren't just here to see her. They were here to see what would happen to her. Jimmy Fallon bounded from behind his desk with his trademark energy. That familiar wide smile stretched across his face like a mask. He moved with the confidence of a man in his own kingdom, every gesture choreographed by years of late-night television experience. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle," he announced, though there was something in his tone that made the title sound almost mocking. As they embraced for the cameras, a brief, professional hug that neither of them felt, Meghan caught a glimpse of something calculating in his eyes. This wasn't the warm, bumbling Jimmy Fallon that millions of viewers knew and loved. This was a comedian who smelled blood in the water.
"Wow, look at you," Fallon exclaimed as they settled into their chairs, his voice carrying that artificially amplified enthusiasm that talk show hosts perfected. "You look fantastic. Very unroyal?" The audience chuckled uncertainly, unsure whether they were supposed to laugh at that particular observation. Meghan smiled politely, the expression she'd perfected during countless public appearances. "Thank you, Jimmy. It's good to be here." But her voice carried a coolness that only the most perceptive viewers would notice, a subtle signal that she was already on guard. "So, Meghan, can I call you Meghan? I mean, do I have to bow or anything?" Fallon's grin widened as he pantomimed an exaggerated bow, drawing louder laughs from the audience. "I'm never quite sure with the whole royal protocol thing, especially since you, He let the sentence hang in the air, eyebrows raised expectantly. "Since I what, Jimmy?" Meghan's tone remained pleasant, but there was steel beneath the silk. She wasn't going to fill in the blanks for him, wasn't going to make his job easier by playing along with whatever narrative he was constructing. "Well, since you made your grand exit from the royal family," Fallon spread his arms wide as if announcing the punchline to a joke. "I mean, that's got to be the most expensive breakup in history, right? Did you at least get to keep some of the jewelry?" The audience laughed, but Meghan noticed how some faces in the front row looked uncomfortable. She leaned back slightly in her chair, a barely perceptible shift that created distance between them. "Actually, Jimmy, it wasn't about keeping things. It was about keeping our sanity, our safety, and our ability to raise our children away from a system that couldn't protect them." The laughter died abruptly. Fallon's smile flickered for just a moment, so briefly that most people missed it, but Meghan saw it. She'd drawn first blood by refusing to treat her family's trauma as comedy material. Steve Higgins, usually ready with a quick quip from his announcer's booth, seemed to sense the shift in energy. He shuffled his papers and avoided eye contact, suddenly finding his cue cards fascinating. Even he could tell this wasn't going according to the usual script. Right, right, Fallon said, his laugh slightly forced, as he tried to regain his footing. Family first, I totally get that, but come on, you've got to admit. He leaned forward conspiratorially, as if he were sharing a secret with the audience. The whole thing was pretty dramatic, wasn't it? The interviews, the tell-all books, the Netflix deals. It's like the royal family's very own reality show. Meghan's smile never wavered, but her eyes grew sharper. Is that how you see it, Jimmy? As entertainment? Well, Fallon glanced toward his desk, where his prepared note cards sat waiting. This wasn't how the conversation was supposed to go. His guests usually played along, laughed at themselves, made everything easy and digestible for his audience. Everything's entertainment to some degree, right? You were an actress before I became a target, you mean? The words cut through the studio like a knife. Several audience members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the light-hearted celebrity banter they'd come to expect from The Tonight Show. This was something raw, more real, and infinitely more dangerous. Fallon's laugh sounded hollow now, desperate. Hey, come on, we're all friends here. This is supposed to be fun. He gestured to the audience, trying to rally them to his side, but their response was muted, uncertain. Meghan tilted her head slightly, studying him with the intensity of someone who had learned to read people's true intentions beneath their public personas. Are we friends, Jimmy? Because friends don't usually use each other's pain as punchlines. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the cameramen seemed frozen, unsure whether they should keep rolling or cut to commercial.
In the control room, producer Mike Denzo was probably having a coronary, but Meghan found herself feeling oddly calm. For the first time in years, she was controlling the narrative instead of being controlled by it. The studio audience held its collective breath as the tension crystallized between them like ice forming on glass. Fallon's carefully crafted persona was beginning to crack, revealing glimpses of something less polished underneath. A comedian who had built his career on making others the butt of jokes, suddenly finding himself on the defensive. "Look, Meghan," Fallon said, forcing another laugh that sounded increasingly strained. "I think you might be taking this a little too seriously. We're just having fun here. It's comedy." He spread his hands wide, appealing to the audience for support. But their response was scattered and half-hearted. They could sense the shift in power dynamics, the way the interview was spinning out of his control. Meghan leaned forward slightly, her posture relaxed but her gaze laser-focused. Fun for who, exactly? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like the joke is always on the same people, the ones who can't fight back, the ones who are supposed to smile and take it because that's what good sports do. Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Several audience members began to nod, recognition dawning on their faces. Others looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats as they realized they were witnessing something unprecedented, a guest refusing to play by the unwritten rules of late-night television. Fallon's smile became more forced, his fingers drumming nervously against his desk. "Come on, that's not fair. I make fun of everyone equally. Politicians, celebrities, myself. Nobody's off limits. That's what comedy is." "Is it, though?" Meghan's voice remained calm, conversational, but there was an underlying intensity that made everyone in the studio lean in closer. "Because I've noticed something interesting about your brand of comedy, Jimmy. You seem to have a particular fascination with women who dare to speak up, who refuse to stay in their assigned roles. Tell me, when was the last time you spent 5 minutes mocking a male celebrity's parenting choices, or their ambition, or their decision to prioritize their family's well-being over public opinion?" The question landed like a bomb in the middle of Fallon's carefully constructed world. A few audience members actually gasped, while others began to murmur among themselves. This wasn't just an interview anymore. It was becoming a masterclass in media criticism, delivered by someone who had been on the receiving end of it all. Steve Higgins shifted uncomfortably in his booth, his usual arsenal of one-liners suddenly feeling inadequate. He'd been part of this machine for years, helping to craft jokes that reduced complex human beings to simple punchlines. But hearing Meghan articulate the pattern so clearly made him see it through different eyes. That's not, Fallon stammered, his composure finally beginning to crack. Look, you're twisting this around. People want to laugh. They want to forget their problems for a while. Comedy brings people together. Does it? Meghan asked, tilting her head slightly. Or does it teach people that it's acceptable to punch down? That someone else's trauma is fair game as long as it gets a laugh? She gestured toward the audience. Look around, Jimmy. Are these people laughing together, or are they uncomfortable because they're finally seeing how the sausage is made? Indeed, the audience was no longer the cohesive unit that typically responded to Fallon's every cue. Some faces showed growing admiration for Meghan's courage, while others displayed irritation at having their entertainment disrupted by uncomfortable truths. The division was becoming visible, a microcosm of the larger cultural tensions that existed beyond the studio walls. Fallon's laugh was becoming increasingly desperate. You know what? Maybe you're just too sensitive. Maybe that's the real problem here. You can dish it out, all those interviews, all that drama, but you can't take a joke? The words left his mouth before he could stop them, and immediately he seemed to realize his mistake. The accusation hung in the air like poison, and Meghan's expression shifted subtly, not to anger, but to something colder, more dangerous. Too sensitive, she repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. How predictable. When a woman refuses to accept being diminished, she's too sensitive. When she speaks truth to power, she's being dramatic. When she protects her children from a machine that sees them as content to be consumed, she's overreacting. Her words remained steady, but each word was precisely chosen, surgical in its accuracy. Several women in the audience began to applaud, tentatively at first, then with growing conviction. The sound seemed to startle Fallon, who was used to controlling when and how his audience responded. That's not what
Do you know what I find fascinating about this whole exchange, Jimmy? It's that you seem genuinely surprised that I won't just sit here and let you use me as comedic fodder. As if the very idea that I might push back, that I might refuse to be your punchline is incomprehensible to you. The camera operator zoomed in on Meghan's face, capturing the quiet fire in her eyes. This wasn't the composed, diplomatic duchess that the public was used to seeing. This was a woman who had been pushed too far, who had decided that maintaining politeness was less important than maintaining dignity. I think, she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word, you've mistaken my willingness to be civil for weakness. You've assumed that because I've been gracious in the past, because I've tried to take the high road, that I would continue to do so indefinitely. But here's something you might not have considered. What if I'm simply done being gracious about cruelty dressed up as humor? The studio fell completely silent. Even the crew members seemed frozen, unsure whether they were witnessing a career-defining moment or a career-ending disaster. In the control room, Mike Denzo was frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this unprecedented moment play out, knowing that either choice could have massive consequences. Fallon opened his mouth to respond, but for the first time in his career, words seemed to fail him. He was face to face with someone who refused to play by his rules, someone who had turned his own studio into a courtroom where his methods were on trial. And for the first time in years, Jimmy Fallon wasn't sure he was winning. In the control room, Mike Denzo's hands flew across the control board like a pianist in crisis. 23 years in television had taught him to expect the unexpected, but this was uncharted territory. His earpiece crackled with voices from network executives, all demanding answers he didn't have. "Jimmy, keep it light," he whispered into his microphone, praying Fallon would hear him through the chaos. "Pivot to the book promotion. Get back on script." But on the monitors before him, Denzo could see that his host was drowning. Fallon's usual arsenal of self-deprecating humor and boyish charm was useless against Meghan's unflinching directness. The ratings ticker in the corner of his screen showed numbers climbing steadily. Controversy was pure gold for viewership, but network sponsors were already calling, nervous about being associated with what looked like increasingly a public relations disaster. Backstage, Lisa paced frantically behind the curtain, her phone buzzing with urgent texts from the publicity team. "Just get through this," she muttered under her breath, watching the monitors with growing horror. This wasn't the carefully orchestrated media appearance they'd planned. This was Meghan going completely off-script, burning bridges in real time. "Tell her to smile," came the urgent voice of her assistant through her earpiece. "Get her to pivot to the children's book, anything positive." But Lisa could see something in Meghan's posture on the monitor that terrified her more than any bad headline ever could. Resolve. This wasn't a woman having a momentary lapse in judgment. This was someone who had made a calculated decision to stop playing the game entirely. On stage, Fallon was still scrambling for control, his voice slightly higher than usual as he attempted damage control. "Look, we're all just trying to have a good time here." "Are we?" Meghan interrupted, her calm tone cutting through his nervous energy like a blade. "There's a difference between having a good time and trying to have a good time at my expense." The audience was no longer laughing. They were witnessing something unprecedented, a complete breakdown of the late-night television format, live and unfiltered. Fallon's desperation was becoming palpable now, sweat beading at his hairline despite the studio's air conditioning. He reached for his water glass with slightly trembling hands, buying himself a few seconds to regroup. When he set it down, his smile had transformed into something sharper, more defensive. "You know what, Meghan? I think our audience came here for entertainment, not a lecture about media ethics." His tone carried a new edge, the mask of affability finally slipping completely. "Maybe if you spent less time playing the victim and more time—" "Stop!" The single word from Meghan cut through the air like a gunshot. The entire studio fell silent. No rustling papers, no whispered conversations, no ambient noise at all. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. "Did you just tell me to stop playing the victim?" Her voice was dangerously quiet now, each word enunciated with surgical precision. "After spending the last 10 minutes trying to turn my family's trauma into your comedy material?" Fallon opened his mouth to backtrack, but it was too late. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and everyone in the room could feel it. The studio audience began to fracture before everyone's eyes. In the front rows, a woman in her 50s stood up and began clapping, slowly, deliberately. The sound echoed through the stunned silence like a challenge. Within seconds, others joined her, scattered applause that grew into something more defiant, more purposeful. But not everyone was clapping. A man near the back shouted, "Come on, Jimmy! This is supposed to be funny!" His voice sparked a counter-reaction, other audience members turning to glare at him, their faces flushed with anger. "Funny?" A young woman in the third row stood up, her voice carrying clearly through the studio. "What's funny about attacking someone for protecting their children?" The divide was becoming physical now. Supporters of Meghan on one side, Fallon defenders on the other, with a growing group of uncomfortable people trapped in the middle, unsure which way to lean.
Steve Higgins watched from his booth in horror. In 15 years of working late-night television, he'd never seen an audience turn against itself like this. His usual role, this comic relief, felt not just inappropriate, but impossible. There was nothing funny about watching people's fundamental beliefs about decency and entertainment clash in real time. Beyond the studio walls, the digital world was already exploding. Clips from the interview were being uploaded faster than the network could track them, each fragment sparking its own wildfire of commentary across every platform imaginable. On Twitter, hashtag Team Meghan was trending alongside hashtag Fallon Fighting, the hashtags climbing the charts like rockets. TikTok creators were already crafting response videos, some defending Meghan's courage while others mocked her oversensitivity. Instagram stories flooded with hot takes, think pieces, and memes that reduced the complex confrontation to digestible sound bites. In his control room, Mike Denzo watched the real-time analytics with a mixture of terror and fascination. The viewership numbers were astronomical. They'd already surpassed the Super Bowl in concurrent viewers. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from network executives, advertisers, and crisis management teams, all demanding to know how this had spiraled so completely out of control. "Sir," his assistant whispered urgently, "we're getting reports that the story is already trending internationally. London, Paris, Sydney, it's everywhere." The Tonight Show had accidentally created a global cultural moment, and nobody knew how to turn it off. Meghan rose from her chair with the grace of someone who had finally found her power. The movement was deliberate, unhurried, each gesture radiating quiet dignity. The studio fell silent again, hundreds of people holding their breath as they realized they were about to witness something unprecedented in television history. "Thank you for having me, Jimmy," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the stunned quiet. "And thank you to everyone in the audience who reminded me tonight that there are still people who believe dignity matters more than entertainment." She turned toward the camera, speaking directly to the millions watching at home. "To anyone who has ever been told they're too sensitive for refusing to be diminished, you're not. Your voice matters. Your boundaries matter. And you never have to smile while someone uses your pain as their punchline." Without another word, she walked off the stage, her heels clicking against the floor in perfect rhythm. Fallon sat frozen in his chair, his mouth slightly open, scrambling for words that wouldn't come. I guess we'll be right back," he stammered weakly, but his voice sounded hollow in the cavernous silence she left behind. The black SUV pulled away from 30 Rockefeller Plaza as camera flashes continued to explode like miniature lightning strikes. Inside the vehicle, Meghan sat in contemplative silence, watching the city lights blur past the tinted windows. Lisa sat beside her, frantically fielding calls and trying to assess the damage, but Meghan felt oddly peaceful. Her phone buzzed with a text from Harry. "Saw the clips online. I'm proud of you. The kids are proud of you. You did exactly what needed to be done." Reading his words, Meghan felt the last of her tension dissolve. She had chosen authenticity over approval, truth over comfort, and for the first time in years, she felt completely aligned with her values. "The headlines are going to be brutal," Lisa warned, scrolling through the early online coverage. "They're calling it everything from brave to unhinged." Meghan turned from the window, her expression serene. "Let them. I'm done caring more about how my truth sounds than whether it gets heard." Outside, Manhattan glittered with possibility, and she realized she had just reclaimed something precious that she'd lost years ago, her own voice. By morning, the confrontation had evolved into something larger than entertainment news. Think pieces flooded every major publication, dissecting not just what happened, but what it meant for the future of celebrity culture, late-night television, and the boundaries of public discourse. "The night comedy died," read one headline. "Meghan Markle's mic drop moment changes everything," proclaimed another. Social media remained divided, but the conversation had shifted from mockery to something deeper, a genuine examination of power, privilege, and the cost of making people into punchlines. Jimmy Fallon found himself in unfamiliar territory, facing criticism not just for one interview, but for his entire comedic approach. Comedy clubs buzzed with debates about punching up versus punching down, while late-night writers scrambled to understand what this meant for their industry. For Meghan, the aftermath brought both vitriol and vindication. Death threats mixed with messages of gratitude from women who said she had given them permission to stop smiling through their own diminishment. She had become more than a celebrity. She was a symbol of resistance against a culture that demanded compliance in exchange for acceptance. The Tonight Show returned to its regular format, but something fundamental had shifted. The unspoken contract between entertainers and their subjects was broken, and nobody was quite sure how to rebuild it, or if they should.
Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.